In this video, we're going to talk about the first generation of life in the finite universe. We will mention its characteristics, the pace of evolution, limitation on its form and potential technology due to the restrictions of this era. Then we will discuss rising, stagnant and recessive species during the first generation, preluding into what from the first generation that still impacts the finite universe today, wraiths and galactic plagues. So let's begin. Characteristics of first generation life. As there existed almost no heavier elements, life during the first generation of stars was composed of hydrogen and helium. From the perspective of creatures of the third generation of stars, such life would be highly ethereal. No distinct or discernible shape or form, gas-like and often indistinguishable from their equally gas-like surroundings. As the universe was denser and hotter, the stars were larger, burned brighter, and went supernovae faster and more frequently. Universal natural selection nurtured adaptable species well equipped at handling energy and interacting with large masses or having large mass themselves. Speed of evolution. Due to the short lifespan of stars in the early universe, on average only 5 million years, universal natural selection favored species that evolved quickly and quickly became spacefaring. Although most life succumbed to these harsh circumstances, some evolved at a breathtaking speed, adapting to withstand the violent end of the stars themselves, reigniting them after they fizzled out, or leaving behind the need for external energy sources altogether. Limitations on first generation life. Another consequence of the scarcity or non-existence of heavier elements, especially carbon, was the absence of complex organic molecules. Basically, no DNA, proteins, or cell membranes. In order for a life form to produce offspring, it needs a blueprint with information of its own makeup. With no DNA available, this information must be stored within the interactions of hydrogen or helium atoms or in complex energy patterns such as consciousness. Either that or first generation life had to evolve past the need of reproduction. The same goes for storing memories and learning. Life had to evolve other means for those functions than a brain as we know it, or adapt to exist without those abilities. We can liken it to a colony of bacteria, in which no individual organism learns or remembers, but still as a group interacts with its surroundings. Then reimagine the same colony as evolved enough to form a complex society that sends rockets to the moon. Such a society would appear very alien to anyone from our present-day third generation of stars. And most alien of all, a species with no memories nor ability to learn, that does not reproduce nor forms any societies, that on its own grows and expands, and in solitary existence ventures off into the universe. Limits on first generation technology. With several species lacking physical form altogether, and no iron or heavier elements to create tools, let alone technology from, universal natural selection drove first generation life down alternative paths from mechanized warfare and chemically driven rockets. Some species had to become spacefaring using nothing but the powers of their minds. Others had to create machines made of gases alone, manipulating the element density to create an equivalent of alloys. First generation rising life. Due to the speed of their evolution and the readily available energy with which to achieve growth in a denser universe, rising life evolved towards and achieved what we would call omnipotence at the fastest pace of all eras. However, as there were overall less species formed, and it was the shortest of the three eras, we do not find more species evolved beyond interaction with the physical universe at large there than in later years. However, they are presumably among the more advanced amidst their peers. First generation stagnant life. Stagnant life of the aforementioned era also evolved to its pinnacle at a staggering pace. Although their inherent shortcomings put an upper limit on how much they could evolve, availability of energy and resources allowed tremendous growth. Stagnant life of the earlier universe also formed more stable interplanetary civilizations once they left their origin stars behind, as they reached the pinnacles of their evolution more quickly and the overall greater adaptability of all life during the first age of stars. Barring major galactic disasters or interference from other life forms, they thrived. First generation recessive life. During all eras, recessive life is doomed to extinguish the flame of its own existence eventually, by war, by consuming all available resources, or lacking capability to withstand their surrounding environment. However, recessive life of the first generation shared with its more successful contemporaries the ability to handle energy, adapt to changing circumstances, interacting with large mass and rapid evolution. Stars of the first generation mostly ended as supernovae due to their large size. Some, however, fizzled out and cooled. Although most life then died a freezing death, some recessive species that had not yet exterminated themselves entered dormancy. In rare circumstances, when those planets survived into subsequent generation of stars, that life could be awoken anew. Star wraiths and galactic plagues. What was simply the equivalent of a cancerous bacteria during the first age, killing off all its potential hosts, then going extinct, can be a galactic scale menace during the third generation of stars. The encounters can be compared to Columbus's attack on the Americas. Introduced to diseases from which they had no defense, smallpox devastated over 95% of the native population in some areas. Facing such catastrophic losses, mobilizing meaningful resistance was never an option. Likewise, third generation life has never evolved any means of resistance to species so alien to them. Often they cannot even see or interact with their enemy, or even perceive that they are under attack. However, first generation life readily adapts to its new circumstances, and entire galaxies have died out because such life, once awakened, outcompeted all other life in the fight over resources before exterminating itself. Galactic plagues and star wraiths are not the name of species, but names of two types of awakenings that cause such disasters. They are given their distinct names from if they target either the planets themselves or their inhabitants, or if they threaten the stars the planets orbit. Galactic plagues are life forms behaving like locusts, scouring all planets of life and resources as they spread outwards. Star wraiths are ghost-like creatures that travel between stars, consuming them to feed or reproduce, leaving their light snuffed out and the galaxy cold and barren. Some species have taken it upon themselves to guard the galaxies in the universe from threats of the first generation of stars. The end. This was our video about the characteristics of first generation life. We discussed the pace of evolution and limitations on potential technology. We also mentioned the dark legacy of recessive life from the first age of stars, galactic plagues and star wraiths. I hope you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.